Welcome to Holistic Wisdom Live. Today's episode is The Age of Frequencies with Robert Edward Grant. I'm so honored and excited to have him here with us. For those of you that are not familiar, let me just introduce him to you. Robert Edward Grant is a successful entrepreneur, best-selling author of polymaths, inventor, founder of several corporate enterprises, and the host of Codex, an original television series on Gaia and Amazon Prime. He's an artist, sculptor, music theorist, musician, author of numerous research and patent publications spanning biology, DNA combinatorics. That is the first one. I've never heard of that one. Number theory, geometry, and physics. Additionally, he is the former president of Allergan Medical and CEO of Bausch Lomb Surgical, both multi-billion-dollar global healthcare corporations. As an entrepreneur, he's the founder of Strathspey Crown LLC, Evolus Inc., Aeon Biopharma Inc., Alpha Eon Credit Inc., Access Elite Corp., Cyber Corp., Crown Sterling Limited LLC, and Theon Technology LLC. His companies, like his interests, span healthcare, security, blockchain, clean tech, smart optic technologies, AR, VR, and fintech. He occupied several boards of directors of several corporations and universities. He has lived in 9 countries and fluently speaks Japanese, Korean, German, and French. Robert's mission is to integrate innovation, mathematics, natural sciences, artistic design, and entrepreneurship into balanced creations intended to benefit all. Wow, you're like the Renaissance man of the new Aquarian age.
Thank you.
How do you go and incorporate all of this? And before we start, I also wanted to say, because it's so relevant to what we're talking about today, famous quote by Nikola Tesla, that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So talk to us. How do you go from running huge corporations into exploring art, music, pyramids, and connecting ancient wisdom, ancient philosophies, and breaking it down into the qualities through math, which to me, math is beyond, it's not so much quantitative, it's giving us information through quality.
Right. So, wow, how do I make that transit? I guess, first of all, I was always a musician. I started out as a musician. I started out as an artist. I started out early in my life as a lover of all of these things. And then, life happens and you want to have a family and you want to be successful and you want to be able to make money and live. And so you have to give up a lot of the aspects of yourself at the early stage of your life. You turn 19, 20, 21, and you have to decide, do I continue these other pursuits that don't really get me a financial return and I can't have the other things I want? So you start cutting those aspects of yourself off. And then, in fact, you even will start judging it negatively because you're trying to convince yourself. And usually when people judge things negatively, it's usually that they're trying to convince themselves. It reminds me of the Shakespeare quote, right? Which is, methinketh the woman doth protesteth too much. And whenever somebody protests and judge something so negatively, it's usually because they're trying to convince themselves that it's wrong. Maybe because they have a temptation for that thing. Mm. And I remember thinking, I can't be a beatnik musician anymore, just sits around lazy and doing nothing. Maybe because I was dreaming of being a beatnik musician, sitting around being lazy all the time. And so I pushed off those aspects of myself, and I never even told anyone that I was a musician. And it was kind of funny because I happened to be at a big benefit banquet in the Washington, D.C. Mall in 2010. And at the time, I was CEO of Bausch & Lomb Surgical, and it was a multi-billion-dollar company. And I was at this big event that was honoring Oprah Winfrey, Leo DiCaprio, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and several others in something called the Horatio Alger Award, which is people that come from nothing and succeed in a major way and have a big impact in the world. And one of my friends, Glenn Stern, was getting also the award at the same time. So he had asked us to come and attend this big event for him because he's one of 7 people being recognized. And there were probably 3,000 people in the room, including most of Congress, as well as most of the Supreme Court and, the vice president. I mean, the whole thing was hosted by Justice Clarence Thomas of the Supreme Court. So it was a pretty big deal. The entertainment that night was David Foster, who is very famous. He's won 15 Grammy Awards. He was married to Yolanda Hadid, who, the daughter of which is, of course, is Bella Hadid, right? And famous models, et cetera. And he had been married several times, and he was doing this great event that night. And he was talking about all the songs that he wrote for Chicago in the 80s that became, big Grammy winners and all that. And he's like, oh yeah, the royalties of this song I gave to my first wife. And then the royalties of this song I gave to my second wife. And the royalties of this song I gave to my third wife. So he's definitely had a lot of, history with relationships. And he came to a point in the night, and he's a very good entertainer. He's excellent. They had the 4 tenors singing that night. Catherine McPhee, who now he's married to, was there that night as well. And it was a great event. And I was sitting off way in the back of this gigantic rotunda in Washington, D.C. Mall. And so he says, okay, I'm now at the point in the program where I asked someone from the crowd to sing. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny. And one of my close friends who was sitting at the table with me starts screaming. He's like, Robert can sing, Robert, sing. And so I'm like, kind of sitting there quietly. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, shut up. And all of a sudden, David Foster looks out in the crowd. He's like, oh, I see some people back in economy. And they say that someone can sing back there. So I'm like, no. And he comes over to me. And of course, it's a very formal function. Comes over to me and he asked my wife at that time, who we're no longer married, but she, was sitting there and he says, can your husband sing? And she says, yes, he can. She goes, what does your husband do? And she says, he's CEO of Bausch & Lomb Surgical. And he's like, oh, so he's a singing CEO. And so he's like, how about singing Frank Sinatra for us? So I'm like sitting there going, I'm going to die 1,000 deaths, right? Literally die 1,000 deaths. And so he says, go ahead, Robert, stand up on this chair. And of course, with all my friends there, I couldn't say no because what am I going to do? I'm going to wimp out when life, hands you a microphone. Sometimes you'll fold, sometimes you'll focus, and the choice is yours. So I stood up on this chair. I didn't even know the words. He wanted me to sing Fly Me to the Moon. And of course, astronaut Buzz Aldrin was there that night too. So he's like, we're going to do this for Buzz, who was also getting recognized that night. And so I stood up on the chair and he directed the orchestra, which was probably a good, 150 feet away from where we were because we were really in the back. And he directs me, and somehow, I don't know what it is, but I remember all the words to the song. And I belt it out and I get a full-on long standing ovation, right, from the whole crowd.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I couldn't even believe it myself. I'm like, where did that come from? I knew I could sing because I'd always, been in music my whole life. And I always was good with pitch. And I was a trumpet player. I was a performance major in college my first few years until I decided I couldn't make any money at it. And afterwards that night, he said, can we have a drink with you? So he and Catherine McPhee took me for a drink. So I'm sitting there and the 4 tenors were there as well. They're like, man, you really did a great job. Like you really belted that out. Like, wow. And I was like, well, thank you. And the event was like 3 days long. And everywhere I went, people were like, there's the guy, there's the singer guy. It was the funniest thing ever. And so he asked me, he says, would you like to join me for my next benefit concert, which is with Muhammad Ali in Arizona? It's a benefit it's called Fight Night. And I said, I can't do that. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to do that. And he's like, yeah, I want you to be there. Celine Dion's performing and I'd like you to do it. And you could be the singing CEO. And I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, this is not going to fly. So my wife, who was sitting there right there, and she's like sitting there quietly. And later on that night, she says, you're not doing that, which is pretty funny. She goes, you're not doing that. I said, yeah, you're right. But then for my birthday, a month later, she bought me a pass to go to the rock and roll fantasy camp. Right. So music had been a dormant part of my life for, I don't know, 20 plus years. And here I was in my early 40s. And she says, you know, if you really want to knock yourself out and do this, then go to the rock and roll fantasy camp. You can compete. And they have like Axl Rose as like one of the directors. It's like The Voice, the same type thing. So they had this whole competition where you try out for the bands, and I was a lead singer. And so they're like, you know, you get to have, you know, they had all these famous, you know, rock stars from the 80s and 90s to basically like Adam Levine type people, right? The same like on The Voice. And I ended up trying out. I became the lead singer of my band. And the winner of the contest for the week, and it was super intensive, was supposed to open at Woodstock, the 42nd year anniversary of Woodstock, and open for Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So that was the whole thing. And of course, by luck would have it, I won.
Wow.
So I ended up getting to open for Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I sang 3 songs for the band when, you know, at Woodstock, which was like this epic, historic kind of place, right? And it was an amazing experience. But that kind of reawakened. This was probably the beginning of my re-emergence to access the other parts of my dormant self. And it was also around the same time that I was starting to become spiritually inclined. And I remember flying to Hong Kong to interview a guy that was the country manager. He was interviewing to be country manager of Thailand. We had like 700 employees in Thailand alone. And the guy that was the prior boss of Thailand had been in the job for 5 years. But before that 5-year period began, his prior boss was his boss. And that guy went to sabbatical for 5 years in a vow of silence at a Buddhist monastery. So I was supposed to interview him to come back. And I was shocked to find that the guy that had taken his job for the last 5 years was willing to step down and subordinate himself to this person. So it's like, nobody does that in healthcare and pharma. So I wanted to know why. And this guy had so much respect. He didn't talk to anyone for 5 years. So I thought maybe I'll be one of the first people to talk to him. And I met with him, and we were in a salad bar line. And I said, so, hi. And he's like, hello. And I said, what was a 5-year vow of silence like? I said, what did you learn? And he said, there is no duality. There's only oneness. And he didn't say much else. And I was like, what is duality? And what do you mean by oneness? It just sort of like hit me, but it penetrated me on the flight home. I started really contemplating it. And I started writing down all the words that were antonym relationships with each other: good, bad, light, dark, humility, arrogance, all these things that we judge in the world around us. And then I started realizing that they were actually connected, and maybe they're not linear at all. Maybe they're circular or spheroidal, because I've actually met people that believe they're so humble, they become arrogant in their humility. And, you know, you look at a communist and they think that they're all about everything is equal, but then always communist regimes have always turned into fascist regimes.
Yes.
And so I noticed that it's not appropriate to put it on a line, but it really goes like this. And so it really impacted me on the way home. And that's when I think that questioning I had around duality and what is the nature of duality, and is it really just oneness and everything is on a circle or sphere, as concepts, really started impacting me in a major way. And I think that is, you know, also me feeling like all of a sudden I was going to, you know, start to experience some of the things. I'd had my career, I'd been successful, and I'd done all the things way beyond whatever I thought I was going to be able to do. And I thought life is not what it's fully meant to be. It's still kind of empty. And I kept going from one success to the next, and it was kind of like not satisfying. And I felt like something was missing. So that's probably how, you know, when I left Bausch and Lomb, I started my own group of companies, and I decided that it was going to be integrated into this spiritual shift I was experiencing. And, you know, one thing led to another, and, you know, next thing you know, I'm really deeply into the stuff I had loved as a youth. And that was really the whole mathematical side, the musical side. I'd always been good at language, right? That definitely helped. And I really started diving deeply and realizing that the whole world is just geometry, and all the subjects, including the arts and sciences, all the sciences are just interrelated. Mathematics applied is geometry. Applied geometry is physics. Applied physics is chemistry. Applied chemistry is biology. Applied biology is psychology. Applied psychology is sociology. Applied sociology is philosophy, and applied philosophy is math. So all of it is connected. And reading quotes by Leonardo da Vinci around the same time I went to visit Florence, and I was reading a lot by da Vinci, and he is not really known for being as much of a philosopher as he actually was, but he truly was. And he kept saying things like, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else, and that we need to study the art of science and study the science of art. And then we'll start seeing the patterns. So, hemisphere synchronization of the brain, and then the heart brain coming together in one. So this is probably what was the catalyst for me to start to explore these other dormant sides of myself that I had judged negatively earlier in my life because they didn't serve me for what I thought I needed at that point in my life. But
did
actually,
people in your circle, did people in your circle, when you began to shift into more spiritual realms, begin to question your sanity? I'm just curious because it happens to most people who shift from a very linear, it happened to me as well, from a very linear way of thinking to viewing the world from a completely different lens, and recognizing that actually science and spirituality are interconnected, just like you described, through this beautiful geometry, through the frequencies and energy. Did you have a pushback from people around you in your life at that time?
Yes, I definitely experienced it. But it was funny because, I have a joke on this. It's like, what's the difference between a crazy old man and a charming, eccentric gentleman? A few $1 million. Right. So the truth is this. The way society looks at things, you can be crazy. Like people think Elon Musk is crazy, but that he's genius because he's rich. Right. So, and I'm a Taurus, and luckily I was born a Taurus, because Taurus, I now have learned, no matter what, it's like they can fall in a pile of shit and end up coming out smelling like a rose. They always do. It's amazing. And there's always abundance associated with them. It's just part of being Taurus. And I used to think, it's because I work so hard, because I do so much and all this stuff. And now I'm realizing, no, it was just the path I chose. Right. And it's not that I don't work hard. Bulls work hard. They're known for their hard work as well. But, very often we tend to think it's all by the sweat of our own brow. It's all by our own effort. But I know plenty of people that have worked really hard. And maybe it's the way they looked at the world. Maybe it's their perception on it that created their reality of it. And they maybe haven't been able to achieve the same type of success. There are different types that do different things, right? Yes. And so I think, luckily, I was always able to have, a success. And so that probably mitigated a lot of the comments of craziness. And then that led to, okay, well, he must be genius then, right? It must be genius if he's crazy. And I was coming up with lots of ideas. I have lots of patents. I was founding lots of companies and technologies that were slightly different, and when looked at in a certain way could seem crazy. But then it's one of those moments you look at it and go, wow, that's crazy genius, right? So there's a fine line between the two. So yes, I did have some of that, especially when I started going into mathematics, because people were like, dude, they didn't understand what I was saying. And I'm like, but you don't understand. The structure of space-time is this, that, and the other, right? And now all of a sudden, I have a best-selling, book that's been right at the top of the charts in mathematics on, for number theory, geometry, topology, and everything for Amazon the last 2 years. And so people are thinking, okay, well, that's not so crazy now. Right. And that's all new math. It's all mathematical discovery. See, I don't believe that we are here to learn more judgment. I actually believe we're here to learn how to love and be loved. And it's really that simple. And also be fully accepting of who we are. And when we're fully accepting of who we are, then our path that we have chosen becomes revealed to us by the universe. And we realize that everything that happened in the path was another step towards the benefit of the higher self, the soul, right? And it's all about recognizing the universe is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And so for me, as I kind of went through this, I just tried to remain as authentic as I possibly could. And of course, some people are like, oh, you're crazy. And then, you know, I'm discovering things in the pyramid and discovering petroglyphs on the walls and discovering an alpha omega in the pyramid. And then I'm telling my friends, oh yeah, they're like, what are you doing next month? Oh, I'm going to Egypt. And, you know, we discovered a whole bunch of stuff on the walls. And they're like, are you out of your mind? Right? What in the heck? But then as I, you know, kept succeeding with it and I have a TV show on it, then now they're like, wow, you know, what is this? So it has all kind of fallen into place and everything is as it should be. And we often stress ourselves over what other people are going to think. And frankly, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter at all.
Would you say, I would say actually the hardest part is knowing what your path is and surrendering to it. But at what point did you realize that you are on your divine path or where you're meant to be? What was that moment of like, okay, I am exactly where
if you let me share my screen, I'll show you that moment.
Yes.
In fact, because I just did another.
Okay, just made you a co-host.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that moment for me is in 2018. I'd gone to Egypt in 2017 with Nassim Haramain, a mutual friend.
Yes.
And I went back again in 2018 with a group of 12 people. And before I went to Egypt, I was in Israel for the week. So I was basically touring Israel, the Holy Land, and having a very, very spiritual experience already. But in my notebooks, I was drawing Alpha Omega everywhere. In fact, I have those pictures of my notebooks because I've now since published my notebooks because people have asked for me to publish them. And I have them right here. So this was the drawing I drew the day that I was going from Israel to Egypt.
Wow.
So there's an Alpha Omega, and the Omega is a head inside the pyramid. And then right, you know, kind of above where the king's chamber is, I have an eye. So this was something that I was drawing like sacred geometry and channeling, right? And I didn't really know why, but the night before I went to Egypt, I was in Jerusalem, and we had dinner in Solomon's Quarry, which is a giant cave network underneath the Dome of the Rock. And I was surprised to be in there. It was a surprise dinner, a special state dinner, because now you can't even go in there. You can't have dinners anymore. And it's on the Jordanian side. And so I asked where the bathroom was, so I had to give a speech to the group that was there. And there was a harpist playing. I mean, it was like a really crazy dinner. It was all a bunch of CEOs and state leaders. And so I jumped the rope, said I was looking for the bathroom, and all the signs said, do not enter. And I went deep into this cave, deep into the cave. And I was looking for where the Ark of the Covenant was supposedly hidden for over 1,000 years. When King Nebuchadnezzar attacked Israel and in 600 BC and took the children of Israel into captivity again, and then really created that diaspora at that time, King Zedekiah made sure that the Ark was taken out of King Solomon's temple and put underneath the Dome of the Rock, where Dome of the Rock stands today. And it was in this quarry for over 1,000 years. So I was looking for the place that was hidden, and I found a mound of quartz crystal that the rest of the cave was just made simply of limestone. And right next to that mound, I actually have it all on film, and I've actually posted it on Instagram several times. Right next to that mound was carved into the floor Alpha Omega.
Wow.
So this was on May 6th, 2018. Well, May 7th, I was going to Egypt. with 12 out of the 50 people that were with me in Israel. 12 of them came with me to Egypt, and this was that night. And so this video is a video that you're going to see next of one of my friends who went after me, who looked for what I found that night on the rim of the sarcophagus and videotaped it. And he let me use this video. But while I was there that night, one of my friends was laying in the sarcophagus, and I had a memory of being in the pyramid in the same spot I was standing and watching an alpha omega being melted or pressed into the rose granite, because this rose granite is made of 55% quartz crystal, rose quartz, and is extremely brittle. So if you tried to crack it or something with a hammer and chisel, the whole thing would shatter, right? And it's a sound chamber. When you lay inside the sarcophagus, it literally makes a sound. And when you find the right pitch frequency at 117 hertz, it starts to go whoa, 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 like really loud, like an engine. And I looked down at the rim. What I saw in my memory, I looked down in the exact same spot, and this is what I saw. You can see the letter A right here.
Mm-hmm.
And here's an omega right next to it.
Wow.
Right here. Of course, this is very old. I was there with Muhammad Ibrahim, who you know also.
Yes.
And Muhammad will tell you the story about this. He tells it often, in fact. He came in there, he's like, what happened? Did you do this? I'm like, no, I didn't do this. And he was like amazed. He's like, I've been in here so many times, never heard of anything like this. And it's hard to see. You can't see it unless you have the light just the right way. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. That was the moment, because I'd remembered where I was when it was placed there. And I remember seeing like a green light. It was like a greenish blue light that actually formed it. And I knew from that moment that my life was changed forever.
Wow. Do you have a memory of who you were in that lifetime?
I have a memory of many of my lifetimes, but who I was exactly in that lifetime, I don't know. I know there were 5 people in the room because I do remember that. And I know that, you know, how I felt when I was in there, and I was standing right next to it when it was placed there. So I don't know who I was, but I do know that I was there.
Did you practice right before that moment any kind of meditations, guided journeys, to where your abilities to tap in and have your clairaudience, clairsentience, you know, all your intuitive abilities open up? Or is it something that just spontaneously happened for you?
Well, I mean, all week long, I had a very spiritual trip to Israel. I mean, it was very, very spiritual on every level. And it was all about, I had just finished the alchemical path, which I teach in the etymology of number. And I had just gone through the different stages of Negredo, Albedo, Citronidas, Rubedo, and the Phoenix stage. And right before I left to go to Egypt, in my parents-in-law's front yard, I was taking the luggage out of my car, and a giant Bennu bird, a white egret, giant white egret, which we don't have them much here in Southern California, landed right in front of me. And it just stared at me. And I'd been having dreams of these white egrets, and that's a symbol of the resurrection. It's the phoenix. It's a representation of the phoenix for the Egyptians. So the Ben bird. And I saw it right before, so I knew that there was going to be something very spiritual. And then I went to visit in Israel. I went to visit Capernaum, where we saw, you know, the house of Peter, the apostle, which was 888. You know, it's 3 octagons within each other and his property. And there was a big peacock in a mosaic that was there at the time of his life on the ground outside, and flowers of life everywhere. and pentagons and hexagons everywhere, which is also another symbology of that period. And then on the way from Capernaum back to Jerusalem, we stopped to get gasoline for our bus. And the tour guide guy who was arranging it, I was actually the host of the trip, but he said, if anyone would like, it's going to take 45 minutes for us to fill up the tank. So if anyone would like to get off here and get baptized, this is where Jesus was supposed to be baptized, in the Jordan River. So it's like just a random thing. Well, it became a very spiritual experience, and I was the first to go in and get baptized that day. So this was a very spiritual week on every level. And I knew that I had to be born of water. And born of water really represents this reemergence of the feminine within the masculine. So we all have energies of both sides within us. You have masculine in you, you also have feminine in you. And the key to philosophy and to higher knowledge, to tapping this field, this morphogenetic field or the Akashic record, is really about achieving balance by abandoning and leaving behind the notion of duality.
Would you say that duality exists throughout all of the creation? That contrast has to exist.
Yes, it's a hermetic principle of polarity.
Yes.
It must exist, but it's still only part of our perception. So think of it like this. When I look at a diamond and I want to buy a beautiful diamond, the best thing to put it behind, the salesperson will put it behind, or in front of rather, they'll put behind it a black velvet cloth.
Yes.
Why? Because putting the black velvet cloth behind it brings out all the light in it. And it's brighter and it's more beautiful. And so more likely to be bought at that moment, right? So the dark needs the light as much as the light needs the dark, but they're not separate. So if you look at even films, right, throughout the last 100 years or so, every time you have some real darkness in the land, like in Lord of Rings, right, all of a sudden the orcs are coming on board, and then somehow all the people on the good side, on the light side, with Gandalf, who are wearing white instead of black and all this, somehow get more powerful and they get upgraded. So if there's more darkness in the land, there will be more light in the land. It is always that way. And then magic returns. So when there's really dark stuff happening, then magic comes back into the world. Everything must remain in balance. Every action must have an equal opposite reaction, period. So they're not really separate at all. They're intertwined. And if we get stuck on the polarity of it, that's why, this company called Galactic Federation, who they make these great products and t-shirts and everything. They were nice enough to send me some shirts and everything that are very cool. Love them, with geometry, Metatron's cube on the front and everything. And they sent a hat along with it, and the hat said light worker. And I was like, okay, light worker, that's cool. And I don't wear hats like that. It was like a baseball cap. And I gave it to one of my colleagues here at the office, Andrea. And I said, you wear this, it'll look good on you. And you like light worker stuff anyway. I said, maybe they should send me a shadow worker hat.
You're going to love what we're calling it. So Alejandro and I used to call people who are in those lower frequency shadow workers. And we realized they're actually not, you know what they are? The great awakeners.
Yes.
They're here serving to wake up the rest of the humanity. So we've transitioned from the shadow into the great awakeners.
Yes. And it has to be such a massive contrast for us to wake up.
Yes.
That's the truth of it. Right. So that's what I realized. And I just went for it that way. And I started realizing that all the things that I thought were bad in myself were not really bad at all. They were just things I didn't accept in myself. And the more I judged myself, the more I judged the outside world of those same things, because I wanted to deflect. So the people that are the most arrogant are most worried about how all the people around them are arrogant, because they themselves are arrogant. See what I mean? Yes. We attract everything we judge until we no longer judge what we attract.
Absolutely. So let's go into the path. I just want to dive into the connection that you did, which I found so fascinating. I watched your video on Leonardo da Vinci's painting, Alpha and Omega, and how you connected it put the dots together with the Great Pyramid in Egypt. That just really blew my mind. And it actually confirms something that we have discovered through our work, that Leonardo da Vinci had this ability, like many others, like Isaac Newton as well, to, you can say, time travel, or use, maybe it's wormholes. I don't know how you perceive it, but he was able to, time and space didn't exist for him. And this is how he was able to transcend the limitations of where we are and bring information of what we call the future, but it's really just information which exists in the field. And this is kind of, in a way, the connection that you've made with the ancient Egyptian pyramids, the art that Leonardo da Vinci created, and you can say the symbolism that is inserted in there for us to discover. And then I want to dive into, what do you feel this discovery is leading into?
Wow. Okay. So you're lucky because I had this already pulled up.
Oh, this is good.
I'll go ahead and pull this rest of this up for you. Okay. So, because this is actually all part of it. So this was the Alpha Omega, right? And you can see it pretty clearly right here. Now, these are not, everyone thinks these are Greek letters. I don't believe they're Greek letters. There's Alpha Omegas that are older than any hieroglyphics in Egypt. I believe that these were Atlantean loan letters to the Greek language. And I believe before that they were Arcturian. The Arcturian mothership, Athena, has a logo on it that is Alpha Chi Omega. So you could see it from the side here. Here's the Alpha. It even has serifs on it. And then the Omega right here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Not likely to be graffiti because the proportions of it, the width is 5.605 inches, and the slope is 56 degrees, 5605 degrees as well, both of which are the square root of pi times 10. And the perimeter of the room is pi times 10 meters exactly. So these are the measurements, and 12 of the major mathematical constants that are built into the proportions of the Great Pyramid are built into these two letters, including light speed, the Euler number, the Euler-Mascheroni number, the golden ratio, the alpha constant. Right? The peak of the A is exactly 33 inches from the far side of the sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus is 89.62 inches, and that turns out to be, 89.62 divided by 33 equals the Euler number, 2.718. So that's very advanced knowledge. And then on the other side, the omega is on the 30th inch, but it's 0.33 of the length of the sarcophagus. So there's this symmetry, mirror symmetry between the two, 33 inches, 0.33. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry, right, is the Phoenix stage. Okay, it's the Phoenix merging with the Thunderbird. That's why it's a two-headed eagle. So I started drawing one night. My son was born, and my wife had an epidural, and so she couldn't do anything. She was trying to sleep, and I started sketching out this Vitruvian Man from memory, and I posited that from the navel, which is the center of the circle, to the corner of the square, and this is not the center of the square, is the same slope angle as the Great Pyramid. Wow. And indeed, it was. I also started to draw these circles here that represented chakra positions, and I felt that the chambers were somehow related to this. And indeed, when we figured it out exactly, the cipher, because Da Vinci left these lines on the Vitruvian Man. You see this vertical line here, another one here, another at the two legs. There's one at the chest, there's one at the throat, there's one here, there's one here. There are 14 lines. And actually, he even says up here at the top, it says 1/14. That's why he cuts his man into 14 parts. Well, that's matching the story of Osiris. Osiris was killed by his brother Set and cut into 14 parts. And Osiris as a constellation is what we know as the Orion constellation today. So then we started to realize that when we placed the pyramid over it, where the chakras are is exactly where each of the horizontal lines that he placed are, and they match the exact position of the known chambers inside the Great Pyramid. Which then begs the question, what about these chambers? Would there be other chambers in the pyramid that were yet unfound? And in 2017, they found on the Scan Pyramid project that there's another chamber right here. So we know it's there, and it's very large. We just don't know how to get into it yet without damaging the pyramid. And so this is a film that I made on this exact topic.
The iconic Vitruvian Man, drawn circa 1490 by the great Leonardo da Vinci. It's probably the most famous image of all time, and yet for over 5 centuries, no one has noticed he encoded within it astounding knowledge of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Polymath Robert Grant recently observed that the angle from the navel to the top corner of the square exactly matches the side slope angle of the pyramid. Aware that his cryptologist friend Alan Green had discovered precision sacred geometry connections to the pyramid hidden in the cover of Shakespeare's sonnets, Grant asked him to investigate Da Vinci's masterpiece with the same mathematical rigor. What they found challenges our entire concept of what this enigmatic work of art is really about. It's widely known that the Great Pyramid embodies the ratio of the radiuses of the Earth and Moon. But Green realized that by inscribing a circle within Da Vinci's square and raising that circle so its center coincides with the center of the Vitruvian Man circle at the navel, 6 perfect pyramid cross-sections are revealed, along with an exact geometrical match of the Earth-Moon pyramid relationship. Da Vinci states explicitly, in the backwards mirrored text surrounding his image, that its proportions are exact integer ratios of the whole man. And he's cut his man in 14 places, clearly identifying those proportions. In addition, he says decrease the height of man by 1/14, a second veiled reference to the Horus Eye myth in which Set cuts Osiris' body into 14 parts. Now, the magic. Da Vinci's lines reveal a perfect blueprint of the internal structure of the pyramid's chambers. Only the Queen's chamber seems to be missing. But is it? Queen Isis, mourning the cutting of her husband's body into 14 parts, represents the 14 phases of the waning moon. Her reconstituting Osiris body represents the 14 phases of the waxing moon. Da Vinci has precisely identified the presently known subterranean, Queen's, and King's chambers, the ground level of the pyramid, its defining side angle, and its mathematical relationship to Earth and Moon, centuries before these were supposedly known. Which begs the question, do his upper lines represent presently unknown chambers? Da Vinci seems to be telling us the Great Pyramid hides a deeper esoteric symbolism than has ever been suspected. A blueprint of man's unfolding spiritual journey through the sacred energy centers in the spine, known as the chakras. Perhaps finding these inner chambers in ourselves is our ultimate purpose, and the Great Pyramid, but a metaphor for the true measure of mankind.
So how many pyramids in Egypt, based on Leonardo da Vinci's drawing, have been discovered and have yet to be discovered? How
Well,
many?
I mean, I think there's 9 pyramids in Egypt that are what I would call antediluvian or pre-flood pyramids. This would be the 3 pyramids on the Giza Plateau, not including the satellites, of course, because there would be more. But there are the Lehun Pyramid, the Meidun Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, and the Red Pyramid, right? These are all pyramids that have very large block sizes. And you could tell the age is much older because of the block sizes. The newer pyramids, even though that's the opposite of what most people in Egyptology believe, they believe the first pyramid was a step pyramid. It's very asymmetrical. It's made with small mud bricks. I think they were trying to copy, in a way, what they had seen before them, but this is more practical, right? They're definitely way more practical, not as gargantuan. I mean, you would never, because you could have made the pyramid with smaller blocks. The only reason why someone would make the pyramid with such big blocks is if A, they had some big significance in doing so, and B, if they had a real ease of being able to operate with very large blocks. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. Why would you mess around with things that are, 70 tons in size versus something that you could probably have, like each brick could be like 10 pounds or something? It doesn't really make sense. So, and the mathematics in the Great Pyramid are so precise and so exacting that it just doesn't make sense that they wouldn't have known the significance of it. It's almost as if they were trying to hide and encrypt something to us through time to show their advanced knowledge of what it was.
And that's exactly
because they knew we were going into, they knew we were going into a dark age type of thing, and that this would be the way that we would climb out, right, and relearn and bring ourselves out of the ashes of iron ages, etc. So, going back to the presentation, pull this back up. Oops. Here we go. I don't know why my presentation.
Do you think, while you're looking for the slide, do you think when a person or a soul is time traveling throughout different ages, it's able to recognize that it's doing that?
Yes. I've experienced it.
Yes, that's why I asked you.
Yes, absolutely. So you can access all of your lifetimes all at the same time. You can tap into each one. You could do it through meditation. You can do it through just concentration. And it's all about learning more perspectives in life and being able to transcend duality. Once you transcend duality, then the shackles of this timeline are lifted from you. So here we go. I'm going to skip forward.
Okay.
So Da Vinci spent 3 years in Egypt, and he wrote about it in this letter that was in Codex Atlanticus, 1336 reference and 1337. And he talks of going to Bull Mountain. Now, art historians believe that this is just a spurious reference to, kind of a fictional account of him going to Egypt. But I mean, the letter, first of all, Da Vinci never wrote fiction, but because it was so detailed and so colorful in the descriptions, they think it must be fake, right? But nobody questions that Da Vinci wrote it. That's the interesting part about it. But he mentions that this mountain that he was going to inspect and survey was Mount Taurus. Well, the original name of the Giza Plateau is Ras Tau, or Taurus backwards. And the original name of the Great Pyramid is this hieroglyphics right here, which is the Apis bull and the 2 chevrons, which signify mountain, Bull Mountain. And what he wrote was the peaks of the great Mount Taurus to the west, which is on the west side of the city of Giza, right, across the banks of the River Nile. These peaks are of such a height that they seem to touch the sky. And in all the world, there's no part of the earth higher than its summit. So this was the tallest building on planet Earth for over 4,000 years. depending on how old you believe the pyramids to be. And I believe it's much older than that. And the rays of the sun always fall upon its east side 4 hours before daytime, which means there's an equal amount of sunlight on one side, on the east side, as there is on the west, which means it's pointed due north, just like the pyramid is. And being of the whitest stone, the Taurus Mountains consist in great part of limestone. It shines resplendently to fulfill the function to these. Now, he went to work for the Sultan of Cairo, who was a fellow by the name of Kate Bey, who was hiring many different Rosicrucian and polymath scholars at the time for architecture. So he built the Citadel. And if you look at the Citadel, so Kate Bey built this building called the Citadel in a part of Cairo that's called Babylon. And the Citadel looks like a Tuscan castle. So if you look up Citadel, Cairo, let's see. Here it is. So this is in the middle of Cairo now. Doesn't this look more like a Tuscany castle?
Yes.
Right. Which is pretty funny because he hired all of these architects, and Leonardo being one, to do this type of work for him. Mm. And he had trade routes open with the Sforza family in Milan, as well as the Medicis in Florence. And they would do trading through Venice. There's actually quite a few paintings you can find where Kate Bey is arriving in Venice. So the fact that he would recruit Leonardo, and of course, Leonardo as a polymath, wanted to follow the footsteps of all former polymaths before him and actually go to Egypt, because that's what polymaths do. They all go to Egypt. Pythagoras did, which I believe Pythagoras is one of the former lifetimes of Da Vinci, as well as Plato, as well as, all of the Greek philosophers that were geometricians. Mm-hmm. They all went to Egypt. And so this is kind of a revelation now, because nobody knew what happened to Da Vinci for 3 years in Italy. He was gone. And there's no record of where he went. But the first painting that we have, the first piece of art that we have after he returned from Egypt, was the Vitruvian Man in 1486. Was the first reference to it. So, so then we go deeper into this. He even talks about the king's chamber, where he says, I came to the entrance of a great cavern, in front of which I stood some time, astonished and aware of such a thing. Bending my back into an arch, I rested my left hand on my knee, held my right hand over my downcast and contracted eyebrows. So he's like bending over. This is exactly what you have to do, because the corridor that takes you into the king's chamber from the grand gallery is only 1 meter high. So you have to like bend over and crouch. And that's exactly the same thing I did, right? The first time I went in. And, then to the other, to see whether I could discover anything inside, and this being forbidden by the deep darkness within. And after having remained there some time, 2 contrary emotions arose in me, fear and desire, fear of the threatening dark cavern, and desire to see whether there were any marvelous thing within it. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes. Amazing that there's such a writing.
Yeah, there is, right? So Da Vinci didn't just limit it to, the Vitruvian Man. He encrypted all of his paintings. I posit that every painting after 1486 is encrypting hidden knowledge of Egypt within it. And this is another example of one. Now, he lived in the same house with Anne Boleyn, who was the mother of Queen Elizabeth I, in the last 3 years of his life. And Anne Boleyn was in her teenage years at this time. She was like 16 to 19 years old, I believe. Mm-hmm. She later married King Henry VIII until he tired of her, and they had a child named Elizabeth I, who became Queen of England. But then when he tired of her, he cut off her head famously for having an adulterous affair. Well, if you look at this painting, you'll notice that there's actually an eye of Horus around her head. You see it?
Yes.
And in fact, the eye, or the iris of the eye and the pupil of the eye, is framed by the lighting in her hair to make it look like an iris.
Mm-hmm. I see it.
Do you see it?
Yes.
And it's got like a slit for a pupil. It's more like a cat's eye. She's got this interesting crystal right over her head that looks like an amber stone right here. And then if you look closely around it, you'll notice that this is just an eye. It also has a medulla oblongata, which comes down like a swirly thing here, comes down here. And then there's a piece that's coming off of it in the front right here too. You see this?
Yes.
Well, actually, this is also a nose. And this is a lion's head, a lion man. Here's the nostril. Here's the other nostril. Here's its eye. It's a cat's eye. Here are the cheek pads. And here's a tongue sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it?
Yes.
So interesting, right? And if we look at a more exposed version of this, you could see it more clearly even. Here's the nose. It's missing the right eye. So there's no right eye in this painting. It's a dark background. She's a moon color, like a silvery color. You've got the tongue of this lion sticking out, the cheek pad, and even the whiskers you can make out in kind of detail. And you can see the nostril here and what looks like the beginnings of another nostril over here. So if we look at the Last Supper painting, one thing you'll also notice is that if I put an equilateral triangle inside here, it would not even closely fit the proportions of Jesus' shoulder and the shoulder and arm of Mary Magdalene, as we saw in the film, right? The Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
But if you look at the crack on the edge of the sarcophagus, it does match, in fact, the exact shoulder line, right, of this thing. So I can turn this down like this and look. Isn't that kind of nuts?
Mm-hmm. So you started investigating all of his paintings after a certain year.
Started investigating all of them. So I went back again in 2020. And while we were there, we had this picture up on our exhibition, presentation in the hotel. And all of a sudden, people started seeing all kinds of correspondences. It was like this veil had been lifted and we could see tons of stuff in this painting. So some of the things we saw, and we noticed, well, wait a minute. We, of course, asked the question, why is this thing here? What is this thing? Right? It doesn't really make sense. It's like painted over also. And if you look at the history books say, oh, there was a door. They believe there was a door that was made here after Da Vinci painted this, which makes no sense because the King of France himself fell in love with this painting so much. And Da Vinci, while he was still alive, was brought to, live with the king to design Chateau Chambord, which is like this incredible chateau in the Loire Valley.
I've been there. Yes.
And so Da Vinci was the original architect on that. And it's a beautiful castle, as you know. So I asked the question, well, why is this here? Well, today, underneath this, there's a portal, a door that goes to a kitchen, right, from the dining hall. And they said that they believe that that was built after the painting was put there. It's like, no one's going to destroy. And first of all, the door doesn't even come this high. The door is like 6 feet underneath where we're looking at right now. So they didn't need to cut into Da Vinci's painting. Why would they do that? It's the most famous painting in the world, or one of, arguably. And why would you hide the feet of Jesus in the first place, right? The washing of the feet is a very famous ceremony. You wouldn't do that. So Da Vinci, I believe, painted on top of this portal for a reason. And that'll become evident in just a moment. So the other things that we noticed on this wall are, it looked like there's a cow over here in the tapestry. Can you see this? There's a horn here, another horn here, and this is the face of a cow, and its eyes right here, and its nostrils are here, and the ridge of its back goes right here. It goes all the way out to here. And there's even writing on the side of the cow that says AQW. Can you see that? It's in script. AQW. So like a hidden cow in here. What is that all about? And then there seems to be even a smaller cow in here with a Taurus symbol stamped on its head in the center of this white section. Here's one eye. Here's the other eye. Here's the horns on the smaller cow, 2 nostrils, right? And so it's like a bull with a Taurus symbol on its forehead. And if I zoom in here, you might be able to see this well. Let's try. Okay, so here's the torus symbol right here.
Yes.
Here's an eye. Here's the other eye. Here's the nose. Here's the horns. So there's a smaller bull here. And the larger cow, can you see the horns here?
Yes.
Right. So what's that all about? Right. And then also you look at the Last Supper and you notice above Jesus, it looks like there's another cat's eye right here in the pediment.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a slit. It even has eyelashes.
Yeah.
It's an eye. And you can see that there's a asymmetrical line that's coming across here to give it the shape of an eye. What in the heck? So then you go to the next. You know, if we were to overlay this on the king's chamber, would we find anything? The other thing is that he used the golden ratio to make this. And remember the alpha omega, the omega was exactly the golden ratio perspective size, 0.618 of the letter A that was on the sarcophagus. So this right here, this size right here is a phi ratio. It's a phi ratio of this size right here. Interesting.
Yeah.
So what's that all about? Well, we have kind of a similar thing with the way he painted it. From the end of where the thumb is over to here where they're crisscrossing and forming like a, you know, kind of an X. He's got to go a little bit over here. She's going a little bit over on this side. But the general shape here is the letter A, and on her garment, you can see here the shape of an omega right in her garment. You see this?
Yes.
And of course, this painting is worn down. It's very old. But here you go. So then I noticed in the king's chamber walls seem to look a lot like the Last Supper, proportionally. And I was like, no freaking way. You got to be kidding me. And then the position of where the sarcophagus is was matching when looking at it from this back wall, which would be the east wall, looking at the west wall here. I noticed that that's the exact position of where the sarcophagus would be. And where Jesus and Mary Magdalene are sitting is exactly where the Alpha and Omega are on the rim of the sarcophagus. So then I overlaid the two by matching, right? So I just simply took, right? If I take this and make it more opaque, right? I take the back wall and I match it to the best of my ability to the top of this wall right here.
Yes.
Then look what happens. The sarcophagus fits right inside that portal thing. The original sarcophagus was moved, right, 6 inches. So if you moved it to its original position, it would be 6 inches to the left, exactly in the center of this portal.
That's remarkable.
Right? Yeah. So, and the feet, even where the apostles are, could match the floor of the king's chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Proportionally, it was working. So then we started looking for, okay, well, if that's the case, then maybe what we saw with the cow on the wall and the Alpha Omega is symbolic of this, you know, Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
Because they're in the exact same position. So maybe this cow and the bull over here on the right side might actually be as well on the wall. And then what about the pediment that looks like an eye up here, an eye of Ra? Well, if we take the labelle ferronniere, the eye of Horus, and we match it up with Thomas, who's pointing up to the nose of this lion, and match them up, you have the face of a lion man, the Leonardo. And that's what Leonardo means, lion man. But what it's really telling us about is the eye of Ra and the eye of Thoth. The right eye, which is related to the sun, masculine, yang energy, explores reason, mathematics, logic, science, and language, now merging with the intuitive, the feminine, sex magic, intuition, symbol of healing powers and protection. The reason why it's called the Eye of Thoth is because Thoth is the one who fixed the Eye of Horus when it was plucked out by Set, who cut his father, Osiris, into 14 parts. And Da Vinci cut his man, the Vitruvian man, into 14 parts. So what about this back wall in the same position? So if I line up the ceiling line, which is right here, right, with the ceiling of the king's chamber, is there perhaps the remnants of an Eye of Ra on the back wall in the king's chamber? And here it is. Just follow my cursor. And it crosses two stones.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the image. Now, the walls were probably scrubbed. Many of the sites in Egypt, as you may know, were destroyed by radical, Muslims who didn't believe that the story was matching their story. So I believe these walls were definitely scrubbed and cleaned and damaged. And so you could see here as well, there's an iris, and it looks like a yin yang in the center of that iris, or a world almost. And you can see the tear duct even right here. And the eye comes like this. This is an Eye of Ra. And it's in the exact same position as this Eye of Ra on top of Jesus in the Last Supper. Here's a larger form of it. You can trace it right here. You can see the tear duct right here. Just follow my cursor. And it goes like this, all the way like this. It comes down like this, and then the eye comes down like this. Can you see it?
Yes. Did it take you a while to see all of this, or it just kind of came to you?
So I trained my brain to see patterns, because I believe that pattern recognition is the doorway to higher consciousness.
Yes.
And that pattern recognition is not only about being able to see patterns like this in mathematics and geometry, but seeing patterns in your life, repetition cycles. Because the things we need to learn are the things we keep experiencing over and over again, and the things we've been judging, and what we need to learn is to stop judging them. So we keep repeating those things until we no longer judge it.
Yes, makes sense.
So here's the Alpha Chi Omega, the Q. Omega is lowercase omega, and it's right on the wall. And we discovered the Alpha Omega on the rim of the sarcophagus. Here it is. How clearly can you see this?
Very well.
Right? Even the Omega, right?
Yes.
Yep. So this obviously then led me to think, okay, if there's a cow here, would there be a cow somewhere on this wall? And look right here. Looks like there's something right here, doesn't there? What is this? Well, my wife Susie discovered it. So here's the cow I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Looks similar to the one I just kind of like pointed out to you. Here it is again. Here's the smaller bull with that Taurus symbol on its forehead. And then we go here.
Oh, wow, I can see it.
Yep, here is the bull.
Yes.
Smaller bull. Here are the horns.
Yes.
Here's the body.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the legs. Here's a diamond shape. You can see the line of this diamond shape that's coming down. This is actually matching, by the way. I've not talked to anyone about this before, but this is the exact same shape of Orion constellation, two triangles merging into each other with the belt. So you could see a descending or an inverted diamond shape as well, right here. And it looks like there's some writing on here also. And then you can see the larger cow around it. Here's the eye. Here's one of the horns. Here's the other horn. Here's the nose. Here's the neck. You can see the musculature of the neck and the front quarter and the front legs.
Yes.
You see it?
Yes.
So, that's pretty remarkable. And then this is what it looks like from the side.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it's etched into the stone.
You know, it reminds me of some of the ancient art they found in caves
The
of
cave
France.
paintings, right? Looks just like the
Right?
French cave paintings. I agree. So this was the moment that Susie discovered it.
Amazing.
Discovery. Go ahead. Well, we just found something else here in the King's Chamber.
There's a bowl here. Here's the face, leg, horn, body. And then something here, you know,
That was before we realized there was a larger cow outside of it too.
I'm blown away.
But you could see the
I'm
cow.
totally blown away. Well done, Susie. That is amazing. Good eye. Look at that bull.
And you can see this diamond right here.
Amazing.
Something written right on it right here too.
Yes. I wonder if Leonardo da Vinci went to Egypt to study in the Egyptian mystery school, and the pyramids that where you're discovering this information was part of that education.
Very likely. I think he had a map. We believe that that Khalid al-Mamun, who broke into the pyramid and miraculously figured out exactly where to blow out the hole and landed exactly on a 13-acre structure, landing and penetrating straight into the Grand Gallery. How did he do that without a map? So even the Egyptians believe he had a map. We don't know what happened to that map. I believe that map is actually in England at Stratford-upon-Avon in the tomb of Shakespeare. I believe it was given by Da Vinci to Anne Boleyn, and Anne Boleyn to her daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, and she gave it to Francis Bacon, as well as Edward de Vere and John Dee, who then placed it in, John had already passed away at that point, but then placed it into the Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon in the altar. And we've been trying to get access to that altar, because if we have a map of the pyramid, and that we also believe it includes the original manuscripts and the identities of the people that were the behind the pen name that was Shakespeare. So it's this is an incredible story. One day it's going to be a movie, I'm sure.
Yes. Dan Brown has nothing on you.
No, because we have real stuff here too. It's like,
Yeah.
so you can see here the bull.
Yes.
And I've copied Dan Brown on a lot of these posts and stuff. And
Has
you
he
can see the
responded to
cow.
you?
No, he never responded. And I even copied Walter Isaacson. And then you can see there's some sort of writing up here too.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the shape of a snake or something.
Yes.
And, you know, it's hard to tell exactly what it is, but I did discover what it was on my last trip there. So if I have time, I'll take you through some of that. So basically, the word alpha is derived from the Hebrew and Semitic word aleph, which means bull. So alpha is bull, Apis bull in particular, and omega. So this is the Apis bull, and it's also a symbol for Osiris, which was Orion, which was Vitruvian Man. And the Hathor gives us the shape of the omega. Here's the uppercase omega in her hair. Here's the lowercase omega in the womb.
Wow.
Which is the shape of W. So you've got alpha omega. When you take alpha and Venus, and this is also the Ankh, the shape of the Ankh, and you combine the bull with the omega, you end up with the symbol of Mercury, Thoth. Hermeticism. Remember, the name of the pyramid is Bull Mountain.
Yes.
So that means that the name Aleph Bet, which is the word in Hebrew for alphabet, actually means the bull's house. The house of the bull. Bet means house. Gimel, which would be the letter C, is camel. So Aleph, Bet, Gimel, right? And you keep going through all the letters of the alphabet. But alphabet is bull's house.
Hmm. Where do you think the ancient, the Hebrew alphabet came from? Was it given to us by the beings
the
that created?
original
Mhm.
the original Hebrew alphabet was really from the Phoenician language. So Phoenician, I believe Phoenician and Greek were loan letters from Atlantean, because the Phoenicians were seafaring people. You know, they had their empire, went all the way out to Carthage of Spain. And we hear the story of Solon, who was the I think great grandfather or grandfather of Plato, who tells the story of the destruction of Atlantis. So there was clearly a connection with Greece. And I believe what we have today, and by the way, the Greek language didn't have numbers. The numbers of the Greek language were the letters themselves. So alpha was the number 1, right? Beta is the number 2. Gamma is the number 3, right? It's just like gematria. It is gematria. So that's how they used their numbers, was just simply with letters. And that's also true in Hebrew.
Yes.
It wasn't until we had numbers that emerged out of Saudi Arabia that we got the Arabic numeral system.
So the ancient Egyptian, or the Egyptian pyramids, and most likely the ancient Egypt civilization, came from Atlantis. This is the remnants of the ancient Atlantis in a way.
That's what I believe.
Yes.
So you've got the Apis bull here and the Hathor. And the story of Apis is really the symbology of Osiris. Osiris had to kill his ego, die, and be resurrected. And then eventually had to give up his separation to be merged back into his mother, the Hathor, which Hathor is a representation of Isis. So women go through these different stages of symbology. The first stage is they're the young girl, the maiden, right? Then the maiden turns into the matron. And then the matron becomes the grand matron, right? So you have these different stages in the woman's life, whereas the man's life doesn't really change that much, right, in these stages. And I've noticed it as well. It's like, I think women, when they're maiden, feel it's appropriate to act a certain way and to dress a certain way. And there's a lot of judgment that can happen that I've noticed, throughout my life, where people are like, okay, that's got to be age appropriate. We don't really have as much age appropriate norms in society around what men do and say and act and wear. But we definitely do for women. And it's kind of strange, but it's kind of the way it is. I don't know why it is. I'm not saying it's right. I don't like it, but it's just how I've noticed it has turned out as well. So Osiris was known as the great bull of the West. So this god, right, you can read it right here. More precisely, Apis was interpreted as the Ba of Ptah, perhaps because the union of Ptah's soaker Osiris, the Apis was linked with Osiris. This god, also called the great bull of the West. Osiris was supposed to have come from the West, not from Egypt, somewhere far west.
Atlantis.
Yeah. So Isis, Hathor, and the Egyptian mystery. So the young version of Isis, right, is a different symbology than the Hathor. The Hathor is the representation of Isis that is more the matron, and Isis is more the maiden or the maid. And it's a different sort of way of looking at the world. When you go to Dendera, which is the Hathor, the temple of Hathor, it's one of the most spiritual places I've ever been. And time and the separation of time there is very, very thin. And I experienced going through time dimensions there. And I got it on film, and it'll be on the next season on Codex.
Amazing. So would you say, going back to the different, as you talked about, stages of females, that it's more related to the vibrational frequencies also, because it's the frequencies of how we go through life, and those frequencies change as we embody and land more into who we are?
Well, I think it's really interesting. I think it's also built into the feminine. that when men marry, they want their wives to stay the same forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the nature of the masculine to be upset over time when their wives change. So, and in the opposite way, when I know people that have gotten divorced, and I ask the woman, why do you want to get divorced? It's a friend of mine, for example, and they'll say, because he never changed. He never grew up. He never became the man I wanted him to become. And then I asked the man, why do you want to get a divorce? You loved her so much when you married her. Well, because she completely changed.
Yes.
Like, she used to like sex. She used to like be fun. She used to want to go to games and stuff. Now she has no interest in any of this stuff. And she's just like an old woman, right? And makes me feel like a stupid little kid. Sound familiar?
Yes.
So the man, he has this embedded desire that the woman never evolves, and the woman wants to evolve and expects that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's sort of an inherent mismatch right from the very beginning. Of course, the man is not going to be like, he can't expect that a woman's never going to change. And the woman can't expect that the man is going to totally change into a different person. It's a mismatch right from the very beginning.
Yes. It's a vibrational mismatch. Unless you meet each other already as two evolved individuals, then it's a different story.
Yeah, it's like all the planets and moons all have to come into alignment. It's like everything's perfect. Oh my God. Otherwise, it's just like a shit show, right?
Yeah.
And that is the nature of relationships. I've seen that many, many times.
Mm.
So I think there is this desire to evolve. The woman wants to evolve. It's the feminine's desire to evolve and change and grow through life. Whereas the man's like, I want to find comfort and I want it to always be that way. I want it to stay. And maybe this is the difference between radiation and gravity, and the cycles of death and resurrection, and involution and revolution. But there's something very beautiful in it, regardless, right?
Yes.
So can you see the, okay, great. So you could see this right here. This is the pyramid and then the Vitruvian Man. So the Vitruvian Man has the Great Pyramid encrypted within it in this angle. The Last Supper does as well. And what about this highly contested, very much debated painting called the Salvator Mundi, the most expensive in the world? Well, actually, this does not have the same angle as 5184, but it has 4184. And what is that? That is the angle of the pyramid just at the corner. And in fact, if you take, because the embroidery is this thick, and this right here, if you look at it, if I turn this picture upside down, you'll notice that this is actually, I'll just go ahead and flip it for you so you'll see. Let's see. This shape look familiar? This is the exact shape of the King's Chamber.
And it looks like the shape in the Last Supper underneath Jesus's feet, right under the table.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So now if I took the line, right, that I use right here, let's see if I can grab this, and I flip these upside down. Oh, not that. Okay. Oh, not going to let me do it. Okay, let's do this. If I add a shape here, now my thing is not letting me do it. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to add this shape right here. And if I take this and use this basis right here, come across here. So this would be the line. So I'll take this across like this, right? So this is sort of bending, but I'm going to take this corner right here and this corner to here. And then I'll take this and I'm going to see what angle I get by taking it not to here, which would be the Eris edge. But if I take it to here, guess what that is? 5184.
Oh, wow.
It's the Great Pyramid. And look, you've got 888 all embroidered into his X. And the 888 represents Christ consciousness. So you got the king's chamber here. The queen's chamber fits right inside this little thing underneath here. And then it looks like there's a tiger's eye right here up at the apex, close to the apex, which is where the crown chakra is. Now, if I look at these three, I'll show you something else. I'll do this real time for you. So if I take this same thing, I'm going to get rid of these things. Let me just do this real quick. Okay, so I'm going to flip this thing back around.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Flip it back. Okay, so now look at the last. I mean, look at this this orb that he's holding.
Yes.
Now, if we zoom in on this, and I can get rid of these other things because I went ahead and did this. So I can blow this up a little bit. So if I blow this out and expand the size of it, right, I can take this and just go like this with it. Okay, so we can get rid of this and this and this. Okay, so now let's look at this. Now, one thing you'll notice here in the hand, what does this look like the shape of?
A pyramid?
Yep. It's the pyramid. It's even got the edge here, and it's got the missing pyramidion too. And if we look really close, what's the shape of this star right here? It's the shape of a little heart.
Mm.
Can you see it?
Yes.
It's really small, but so then when you look at that, well, let's look to see what constellation that might match. So let's see. We know that the pyramid's orientation is Orion. So let's look at the Orion constellation. $12, right? Oh. No, okay. All right. Tell me to be right there. So if we take an official picture of Orion, I'm trying to find one of the correct ones that are like official, right? Official. Those three stars are these top three stars.
Yes.
Right here. So I take this like that. Okay. Then back over here. Oh, where did my picture go? There it is. Okay, so I can go like this. So now I can change the opacity on this, right? And I have to flip it around because it's a reflection, right?
Yes.
Then I rotate it. And I shrink it.
Well,
look at that. It's Orion. So I'm going to have to go now because I have another meeting I have to go to. But the message is this. There's a lot more to the pyramid.
Yes.
And the story is told on all the walls, the petroglyphs.
And it's for us to be discovered right now. This is the time for humanity to discover the truth.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
All the best.